And so you have a lot of people trying to heal themselves from pain on their own. And I say, you know what? It's a very tricky place to be because there's a lot more to anatomy and physiology that we need to understand if we're going to heal ourselves. So a lot of people come to me, after trying to mash themselves and it doesn't work, and I release their tension in seconds, and they say, how'd you do that? Like, why? I don't get it. I've been mashing this for days. I say, well, because I finally listened to your body and I slowed down enough to realize that your body didn't want to be mashed. Your body wanted to be supported.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Sabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. We've got a great show in store for you today. But I want to remind you, after listening to this episode, go over to SavannahSpirit.com/contest and enter in your information to win the weekly prize. The great thing is, you don't just go and enter once and that's it. You can go back each and every week because there's a new prize given each and every week. So go back, enter in each week, give it a shot after listening to each episode, and hopefully you can win one of the weekly prizes. Now, our show today is all about the healing powers of bodywork. Our guest today is Edan Harari of Kinetic Body Therapy. He's a licensed massage therapist, an osteopathic manual therapist. Excited to have him on the show today. Edan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I am really, really honored to be here. I love your podcast, and I really love the guests that you have on, and I'm really honored to be here, sir.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And we're definitely happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with bodywork.
Sure. Well, I'll try to keep this short. I was in the restaurant business many years ago, working with my dad. He used to work for a nightclub, a jazz club in New York City. And I found myself really stressed out. And I used to love giving massages to friends and family and to the waiters and waitresses at the job that I was at. I was managing the nightclub. And one day I was really stressed, and one of the waiters was like, hey, go see my massage therapist. She does something called Thai massage. It's amazing. Go check her out, get a session. It's about an hour and a half. I said, okay. So I went to get a proper professional massage, which I never got before. I was around 19 years old, okay? And it blew my mind. Literally, I stepped out of her office after this Thai massage, which was on a mat on the floor, right? It was a proper traditional Thai massage. And I was shifted. I felt better than I've ever felt in my life. And I felt ecstatic. And it was just a way that I treated my anxiety at that time. And I was like, wow, like I have this gift in my hands. I can actually help people do this as well. And I was so inspired that I was like, maybe I can do this for people as well one day. But then I kind of went back into the restaurant business, the nightclub business. My life kind of got busy, and I found myself in bed with a torn Achilles tendon, injury. And I had about a month to lay in bed and think. And that was when I was like, okay, I really need to change my current lifestyle and my career, because I wasn't happy. I was actually quite anxious all the time. I was working 12 to 14-hour days, and I knew it wasn't good for me. So I was like, okay, I got to change my life. I have to do something else. And so I had a conversation with my stepdad. Long story short, I realized I should sign up for massage school, because he was like, make your hobby into your career, and I was like, really, I can do that? Coming from a family where my dad is an entrepreneur, and he's all about we don't become massage therapists, we hire massage therapists and open a spa, right? That's the kind of thinking that I'm coming from. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to massage school and I'm doing this, and that's it. And I went to massage school. I wanted to practice Thai massage, but then throughout my career, I realized that, I also want to do deep tissue and all these other techniques. I started to study all these other methods. But the real method that stuck out to me, and the system of healing that really stood out to me, was OrthoBionomy. And I had one of my teachers in massage school who was practicing this interesting modality that most of us can't remember or pronounce, and he actually healed my foot from a dance injury in 30 seconds. And it just blew my mind. And so that was something that once I discovered that in massage school, I said, I'm going to go learn that. But again, I put it aside and I forgot about it until I was at a bookstore one day, and this book was standing out, and it was OrthoBionomy. It just stood there, and I knew that this was my calling. I grabbed that book, I bought it, I started studying on my own. The very next day, I get an email from the Swedish Institute, the massage school that I went to here in New York, saying we have continuing education classes in OrthoBionomy now. So I signed up for the class, and ever since then, I've been hooked and inspired. And then up until about 7 months ago, I was doing only OrthoBionomy for years. That was 2008 when I graduated massage school here in New York. And now I'm into John Barnes' myofascial release as well. And I combine these techniques together in my sessions, which I call kinetic release therapy, or KRT. It's just a name that I gave to my own healing method of working with these different tools.
So let's talk a little bit about OrthoBionomy itself, because I'm sure a lot of people might be familiar with bodywork and massage, maybe even Thai massage, but OrthoBionomy perhaps not. So when we recognize that the body can hold lots of, because of whether it's traumatic injury or repetitive stress or just habitual patterns, we can hold a lot of that stuff in the body. It's going to affect the way that we move. It's going to affect our experience of pain, all kinds of stuff. What's the basic approach then of OrthoBionomy to help people that are suffering because of all of these various possible things that are going on?
Well, the approach is, I guess, I have a client who recently summed it up really well. She said it's sort of like craniosacral therapy, but for the entire body. And that's kind of what it felt like to her. It's a system of healing that is all about tapping into the body's self-corrective mechanisms and allowing the body to heal itself by way of the nervous system primarily. The proprioceptive reflexes are like the sensors of the body. And what happens is when our body is held in certain positions, it actually will release and heal on its own because it's being stimulated to go into that state of ease. So it's sort of like following the path of least resistance. So as you know, as a yoga teacher, right, yoga is the language of opposites. It's when you try to stretch the body, right? We're stretching the muscles. In general, right? And then you have OrthoBionomy, which is sort of the language of likes. It's more like the homeopathy of bodywork, in that like cures like. So instead of stretching the muscles, we slacken them, we shorten them, and make the body feel so safe that it lets go of the tension instantaneously, within seconds. And what's remarkable about it, and why people call it magic and magical all the time, and they call me a wizard, which is quite funny because I used to want to be a magician growing up, is that it works so quickly because our body is doing that, because our body is releasing and healing itself. And it's really a positional release therapy system, similar to strain counter strain. Maybe physical therapists may be aware of that technique. It's an offshoot of that. And ortho just means the correct use of, and then bio is life, right? And then you have me, which means the principle of laws governing. So basically, Dr. Pauls, who developed the technique, he defined the term as the correct application of the laws of life.
You had mentioned slackening and shortening. This idea then, from an actual technique perspective, and to kind of bring it into what we're contrasting with yoga of, okay, you got tight hamstrings, let's stretch them. The idea here is that you're actually bringing them into the position of tension that they're already in, so that they're getting that the capacity for the nervous system to get okay there and then soften the muscle?
Absolutely. What happens is when we have contractions, that are in spasm, right? When the muscles are actually stuck in that contracted state, when we complete the contraction, it releases. So we complete that process that already has begun. So the body's protecting itself in some way because it feels some sort of harm, either a fall or mental, emotional stress that we induce on ourselves, and then we end up being contracted, right? So we can take the contraction and look at it as a knot in a rubber band. You can take the rubber band and you could try to stretch the knot, but you may make it tighter. But if you just work with OrthoBionomy, it's that perspective of let's bring the two ends of the knot closer together and then it'll unwind. Right. So that's sort of like a good analogy to understand it. However, it's not exactly what happens, physiologically speaking. But it's language of likes here.
And how does that contrast or complement? You mentioned Barnes myofascial technique. I'm familiar with myofascial release. How does the Barnes version of that differ from regular myofascial release? And how does that then complement the work of OrthoBionomy?
That's a really good question. So myofascial release, as I learned it in massage school, was a technique that you apply pressure into the fascial system. And then what you do is you just wait for the body to release. And sometimes it can be painful or uncomfortable. That's the traditional way of practicing myofascial release. The difference between Barnes myofascial release, or MFR as we abbreviate it, is that you apply pressure that's very gentle, very non-invasive, just like OrthoBionomy, and you apply this pressure into the system very gently until there's a piezoelectric effect, okay? And that effect happens when it's sort of like an electrical heat type of effect that happens with the tissue restrictions. They start to melt. That heat starts to melt the tissues, and it's this piezoelectric phenomenon. And it's a very low load of pressure. So you're not pressing too deep. And that's the difference between this and some other forms of myofascial release. And we do it slowly. The technique's applied slowly, and you hold for a minimum of at least 5 minutes. So it's sort of like yin yoga, right? The only change that's happening to the fascia, that when you practice something like yoga or massage or other techniques, is affecting the fascia's elastic component, right? Whereas Barnes myofascial work, the fact that we hold it, just like in yoga, it actually starts to affect the ground substance of the fascia, which is lasting results as compared to the temporary relief and benefit that we get from massage and most forms of yoga, because the whole time is not enough. So that's the key here, and that's the key in Barnes' work, is that we hold long enough. But also the therapist is actually a therapeutic artist who needs to very carefully listen and feel the tissues beneath his hands or her hands unwinding. And so we need to follow the movements that happen. There's actually movement that happens beneath my hands when I work with my clients. I need to follow that. If I don't follow it, the release is not going to happen the same way. And it is an art. It's not just a science. Mm-hmm. And so it's very powerful, and it gets releases that I've noticed in my clients that are much deeper and lasting and full body effect, than other myofascial release techniques that I've practiced in the past.
Now, how can people, given the uniqueness of this work itself and how it kind of differs from a lot of the normal approaches that people take, how can people take the basic understandings of the work that you do and actually apply it into their own lives? I mean, obviously, if they can see a Barnes myofascial release therapist or an orthobionomist, these types of things, I'm sure that would be helpful. But for those that don't have access to that, how can they take what is learned through these systems and incorporate perhaps into their life? Does it mean, obviously it's different than stretching, so can they try these things on their own? Like, what would you suggest there?
Absolutely. But I will say that it does require us to slow down and tune in. And because these therapies are very subtle and gentle. We need to be subtle and gentle with ourselves when we do them. And we really need to slow down. And so I live in New York City. There's a lot of people who come to see me. They can't slow down enough to feel certain techniques like this. So they don't get it. And they're like, wait a minute, I can't feel it happening, right? And then I'm like, okay. They get off the table, they go home. Then I call them the next day. I say, how do you feel? They say, well, my pain is gone. I said, yeah, great. So, I think that the way that we can bring this into people's life is to realize that they can start practicing the self-care exercises immediately and feel it on their own body, but they really do need to slow down and tune in. Some people may need to even do a 2-minute meditation before they get started and really get into your body so that you can feel the subtle shifts and changes happening. So with Barnes myofascial work, I actually use this awesome tool called the Peanut, which is like a self-massage and self-myofascial release tool. And it has a grip to it, so that you can actually apply it onto your skin and do some self-myofascial release. But what people need to do is they need to wait and they need to hold it, just like in yoga. You hold, you wait for the release to happen, and you allow the release to happen. The tricky thing is that if someone's not trained, it may be not the easiest thing for them to go into an actual response and release that happens in the body. But with OrthoBionomy, for instance, we have a self-care video program that's online, and people, most of our clients, me and my teachers and everyone in the Society of OrthoBionomy, we refer our clients to the videos, to watch the videos, or even get the book. There's a book on Amazon people can get. And to try it, so try it for yourself. Try slackening instead of stretching. But don't think about, I want to release this. Think, how can I get my body to feel so safe that it's going to release on its own? Mm-hmm. We are not trying to create change. Instead, we're trying to exaggerate the pattern that's already there. It's about breaking that pattern. But how do we do that? We exaggerate the position of ease and comfort. We tune into the body and listen rather than trying to fix it, right? We don't want to try to fix our body, because when we come into our body in that way, we provide some sort of resistance energetically and neurologically speaking that, in my opinion, causes a reduction of the results happening. And that's why I have people who can come to see me or one of my teachers or orthobionomists and say, you know what, for years I've been getting Bodywork and I wasn't able to release this tension. And in one session, I'm able to release it. And the reason is, in my opinion, is because we're finally listening to their body and we're not judging them. So it's non-judgmental. And we are holding space for them, yet we're engaging the tissues in the right way for the healing magic to happen. And to do that, we really need to slow down and be gentle. And we have to realize that the body has the inherent wisdom to heal itself. And this is a system of tapping into that wisdom and allowing the body to release itself and heal itself very efficiently.
You talked about tools earlier, and I want to get your opinion on that as well. How do you feel about, it seems like every few months there's a new massage tool that comes out. And, I'd say like, hey, anything that's, given somebody an opportunity to be more aware of their body and all that it's probably a good thing. But what is your feeling? You mentioned the one particular, I forgot the name that you gave it.
The Peanut that I happen to really love.
Do you encourage those types of tools in general, though, for people that you work with?
I do, but I will put this caution that when we work with the tools, and if we are trying to dig them into our body, and as some people call it, mashing our tissues, mm-hmm. then we're going to be working with a different modality and a different way of working with the body. Most of the time, that's working on the body. We want to work with the body. That's the big difference between OrthoBionomy and Barnes myofascial work and craniosacral and Feldenkrais and all these modalities that are healing modalities that are subtle and really effective, but they're just not very popular just yet. because most people can't tap into that, right? There was a wisdom there. And, Arthur, who developed OrthoBionomy, Arthur Lincoln Pauls, he was actually a British trained osteopath who was a judo instructor. So the background in martial arts is there. So he realized that there's a way to work with the body where we can pull the energy instead of force it and push, right? So you do jujitsu, right? You used to do jujitsu?
Yeah.
So, jujitsu and judo is actually, from what I understand,
it's considered a sub-art of jujitsu. Yeah, judo is, yeah.
Exactly. So, it's sort of like working smarter rather than working harder. So what I want people to do when they work with their body and try to heal themselves is I want them to figure out, how can I go with the path of least resistance? How can I, instead of taking this tool and digging it into my body and mashing into the areas of tension, how can I ask my body, what do you like? Do you want me to, lay in this position or that position, or maybe I can actually release the fascia in my foot with the tool for my shoulder to release the tension in my shoulder. What most people don't understand is that everything is interconnected and the fascial system is everywhere. And it's something that a lot of us forget. And so we try to just work with the muscles themselves, but that's a very limited point of view and perspective. And so you have a lot of people trying to heal themselves from pain on their own. And I say, you know what? It's a very tricky place to be, because there's a lot more to anatomy and physiology that we need to understand if we're going to heal ourselves. So a lot of people come to me, after trying to mash themselves and it doesn't work, and I release their tension in seconds, and they say, how'd you do that? Like, why? I don't get it. I've been mashing this for days. I say, well, because I finally listened to your body and I slowed down enough to realize that your body didn't want to be mashed. Your body wanted to be supported.
Well, and the slowing down, as you mentioned, is so important in the awareness piece, especially with our fast-paced life. A lot of people, because they're so busy going out, that the only way that they can experience is through that mashing. People are like, go deeper, I want to feel it, and they are just getting beat up. And the tissue's response to that is cool. The nervous system feels it. There's something happening. Yay. So they feel like they're getting something. But as you mentioned, it's not actually getting the release. I work a lot with different types of massage tools and things like that. And the experience that I liken it to, that we're looking for, is that it's kind of like if you've been holding your pee through a movie, the whole movie, and you finally get to the bathroom and you're like, oh, and you shiver, and the whole body just relaxes. And I work a lot because I sit a lot now, especially because of my work, and I'll hold stuff in my deep glutes and hips, and get something in there, and it's just the whole body shivers as it's surrendering. But some people, they think that that's what I'm supposed to do is just beat up that pain and just mash it because it's a sensation.
That's because most people, which first off used to be me in the past.
Me as well. I'm
most of us, we think in terms of Swedish massage or deep tissue massage. Swedish massage is sort of like, it can be enjoyable, but when you're stressed and tight, you want someone to get in there, right? You don't want someone to just gently just rub oil on you, right? So that's what people are thinking in terms of, in my opinion. And I think that when they realize that there's so much more out there than just Swedish or deep tissue massage technique for our body, right? Then we realize we can go into working smarter rather than working harder, right? And I used to be one of those deep tissue therapists. I promise you, I had clients come to me and they used to say, I heard you're really strong and you have really strong hands. That's why I'm here. And I would feed people that, right? That was what they wanted. And they'd come back every week, but they came back every week with the same problems. I wasn't healing them. I was treating them temporarily, giving them temporary relief for a couple of hours or a couple of days, but then they would come back with the same problems, or the problem would be somewhere else, right? The pain moves. People are like, oh, the pain moved. No, the pain didn't move. Okay, maybe it moved, but that's just a sensation of something is wrong in your body. Your body's trying to tell you something. But what Barnes myofascial release and OrthoBionomy does is say, wait a minute, the pain is there, sure, but that doesn't mean that that's the cause. That's just a symptom. Mm-hmm. It's just a signal that the body is giving us to say we need to make a change, some sort of change to our lifestyle, a change to our career, a change to the way we sit at the desk, a change to our life so that we can actually start to feel our feelings and our emotions and not hold everything inside and contain everything inside. Whatever change that is, your body is just trying to tell you, or our body is trying to tell us that something needs to happen here, some intervention, right?
So speaking of pain and interventions, we have millions of people in the United States alone that suffer from back pain. It's becoming an epidemic in our culture. With all the work that you do, I mean, you're in a high pressure city like New York. I don't know what the statistics are for New Yorkers and back pain, but I'm sure they got it plenty, or if not more than most. What do you recommend for people? Because again, it's not the, hey, come and sit on my table, let me fix you. Sure, there's relief that can be offered through you. But we had talked about this even, before our recorded chat of like, if someone's seeing you once a week even, or once a month, there's the 6 other days or the 20 plus other days of the month that they're doing their normal patterns again. What insights and advice can you give to people who are suffering from back pain based on all the work that you do? What can they do in their lives a little bit more that might be able to help that?
Well, I mean, I'll first say this. For years, I was treating people's back pain, thinking that the back pain was coming from a structural issue in that they're sitting incorrectly at their desk, they're carrying something heavy incorrectly, and all the other, myths that are out there, which I will say right now that a lot of them are myths. And a lot of these things are things that the doctors and the physical therapists and massage therapists, because I was taught this in school, right, are feeding the public. But I will say that there's this Dr. Sarno, who has a book called Healing Back Pain, and people need to understand the condition of TMS. TMS is actually a name that he labeled for a sort of a condition that is when your body actually causes you pain, but it's coming from a psychosomatic source, right? The root cause of the issue is actually psychosomatic. So it's somebody not feeling their feelings. It's somebody not feeling their anger, not feeling their anxiety. It's usually either anger or anxiety. So what I would say is I'd offer people to open up their minds a little bit and realize that our pain and our tension in our body and our discomfort is not necessarily coming from a physical, a structural imbalance only. That could be the trigger, right? The trigger is the fact that you lifted something heavy and then you just pulled your back, right? And the doctor shows you on the x-ray or the MRI, like, hey, check it out, you have a herniated disc. And then you think the pain is coming from that. But I will tell you that if the herniated disc was pressing on the nerve, you would be in pain all the time. You wouldn't just be in pain temporarily, right? So everyone knows this, that when we have pain in our body, usually there's some sort of mental, emotional issue that happened before we had the pain that I believe personally is the cause of the pain. So how can we reverse this? We feel our emotions more. If we need to get angry, we get angry, right? In a safe place, maybe when you come home, or what I like to do in my car after I leave, the office is I can close all the windows and just yell at the top of my lungs and just release the anger, right? We cry more. We connect to our feelings more like children. If you look at babies and kids, what do? We forgot that. We lost that. We lost touch with the emotions. And I find in New York, especially, so many people are coming to me for back pain, but it is not at all structural. The MRIs don't show anything. They're like, the doctor said nothing's wrong with me. I say, yeah, nothing is wrong with you. The only thing that is wrong is that maybe you're not noticing that anxiety that you're holding in your body for months now, it's starting to surface in this way. So what TMS does is that this condition actually causes the body to reduce the oxygen flow to, from the nervous system to the body. So what happens is it causes pain because of it's almost like a straitjacket of pressure that happens in the body, which is what happens with myofascial release, is we're releasing that straitjacket of pressure. And so what's the cause of that? It's actually psychosomatic. It's actually from the mind. It starts there. And this is my belief. I believe that even something like asthma is somebody saying, you know what, I can't breathe, right? If the kid is like, I can't breathe, the parents are choking him. There's some sort of, or somebody in his life is actually, or her life is actually choking him. And that's what asthma is. And this is what I believe in. I believe that the root cause of all ailments are psychosomatic. They're actually mental, emotional issues. And a lot of people would disagree with me, and I don't care. That's fine, and neither does Dr. Sarno, who was working at NYU. He noticed a pattern. Now, I noticed a pattern in my practice before I knew about Dr. Sarno, and I realized everybody coming in with back pain, I say, okay, what was going on in your life around the time that you have the back pain? They say, well, one person will say, my mother just died. Another one's like, oh, I just quit my job. Another one is like, oh, I just went through a divorce, right? Like major shifts in people's lives. Back pain is just the reason why it's an epidemic and is because back in the day, it used to be ulcers. Now it's back pain. Why? Because everybody's so concerned about, okay, the collective, consciousness is around like, okay, if I lift this incorrectly, I'm going to pull my back, right? So I have to be careful when I lift it. When I sit at the desk for 14 hours a day, or even 6 hours a day, my physical therapist said, oh, I shouldn't do that, so that's why my body is tense. Yeah, sure, whatever. I know people that are 15 hours a day sitting at a desk and they have no pain. And the pain is something separate. People need to understand that.
And we also see too, and we can see this with verifiable data, is that you can have people that have major herniations or disc bulges be in no pain whatsoever, and people that have just the slightest little herniation or bulge be in excruciating pain. Now, there are physical elements to it, nerve sensitivity, things like that. But absolutely, I think anyone that's in pain will notice when you're stressed out, you feel your pain more. There are issues of what's going on in our mind, not just our nervous system and brain, but our mind itself that contribute to our experience of pain. I mean, you look at other cultures where, India, for example, or China, where they're literally like people that just carry people up mountains or huge bags of all day long, and they're not in pain. I mean, some obviously might be, but there's plenty that aren't, and they're not living in this constant pain that, people here in the West were like, ooh, I went to go pick up a pillow and I threw out my back. It must be because I wasn't bending my knees enough. It's like, okay, maybe, yes. And, there's other components to it. And I think, Eastern medicine has always done a better job at acknowledging and appreciating that side of it. I think Western medicine has some room to catch up there. But in fairness to Western medicine, Eastern medicine has plenty of room to catch up in some of the emergency medicine and all this sort of stuff. So, equal opportunity for both to learn. But I think that's really great. I think it's a great insight too, in terms of, whenever we feel pain, to recognize not just physically what might be going on, but emotionally, mentally, and everything
energetically,
else.
Right?
Energetically.
So we have to realize, I say this all the time on my Instagram, and we are multidimensional beings, beings of light, right? And now I'm going to get a little bit more esoteric and metaphysical, but we're not just a physical body, right? We're a body, we're a mind, we're a spirit, we are energy, we are emotions, we are personality. There's many different layers to us. So I believe that total health transformation is all about tapping into all of these dimensions and trying to heal ourselves by accessing all these different pathways, right? So not just getting Reiki, which is amazing work and it can really heal someone energetically, but also trying to say, wait a minute, maybe I could do something physically too. And then not just doing something physical all the time, but saying, wait, maybe I can do something energetic, right? So OrthoBionomy, for instance, works energetically too. And the advanced practice of OrthoBionomy is working energetically with the energy body and the aura. And we can work from a distance. So the best orthobionomists are the ones can heal you from miles and miles away. And it's pretty powerful. And that's like, a whole nother level.
Whole other topic, whole other side of the...
Whole other topic. That's for another podcast.
So Edan, where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
I would recommend checking out my social media because I put a lot of education out on there, either Facebook, Instagram. Those are the best.
And would that be kineticbodytherapy.com and at Kinetic Body Therapy?
Absolutely. So it's at Kinetic Body Therapy on Instagram, kineticbodytherapy.com. Also, Twitter is Kinetic Therapy. That's the only thing that's different, but everything else is Kinetic Body Therapy. Really easy. You can always Google that. You'll see a lot of information as well. And I would highly recommend people try the OrthoBionomy self-care video that my teacher and I produced back in the day. It's amazing. It's called the Body Ease Program, and that can be found at dissolvepain.com.
Awesome. Well, Edan, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your passion with us and helping us learn from the great work that you do. I'm sure that our listeners have learned something from this, and I hope that they are inspired to go on and continue to find out more about their own bodies. Hopefully they will take the opportunity to slow down a little more and listen. So for all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something today. And I hope you do take the time to slow down and listen. I hope you all have a very present moment. Namaste. Hey everybody, it's Ashton here with an announcement. We're starting a weekly contest giveaway over at Savannah Spirit. If you'd like to enter into the contest to win one of our weekly prizes, go to savannahspirit.com/contest. If you enjoyed listening to the podcast today, we'd really appreciate it if you went over to iTunes, left us a review, leave us some comments, and share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Also want to invite you to go check out Savannah East, which is the name of our blog and also the name of a Facebook group where I interact with guests and our audience. We'll post recent episodes up there as well as interesting articles relating to our guests and or the topics on the shows. And again, thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaheast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.